There are places where the air carries more than breath, where scents linger long after their source is gone. Sweet perfumes in empty halls, smoke curling through ruined chapels, the stench of decay in forgotten places. These are not illusions. They are whispers of the dead, the unseen speaking through scent. Tonight we explore phantom smells when scents carry the dead. There are certain moments when the air itself feels charged, when a presence that cannot be seen makes itself known in an unexpected way. Most often, people imagine ghostly encounters as a shadow in the corner of the eye, a chilling touch, or the echo of a distant footstep. Yet there is another sign, subtle and strange, that slips past reason and lingers in memory. It comes as a scent. The sudden bloom of roses in a room with no flowers. The sharp bite of cigarette smoke drifting through a house where no one smokes. The heavy stench of rot in a place that should be clean. These are phantom smells, believed by many to be the calling card of the dead. Unlike sounds or visions, which we may doubt as tricks of light or nerves, scent roots itself deeper. Smells cling to memory in ways we cannot shake. A whiff of perfume can take someone back decades to a lost love. The smell of wood smoke can bring back childhood winters long gone. When these scents arrive without cause, people often feel they are not simply imagining them. They are being reminded. They are being visited. Reports of phantom smells stretch across cultures and centuries. In old European folk tales, spirits of loved ones would often return as fragrances of herbs or flowers they adored in life. In other traditions, foul odors were warnings of malevolent forces, the air itself turning sour as an invisible danger drew near. In Japan, there are stories of incense smoke curling through empty temples long after the last offering was made, believed to be a spirit requesting prayers. In parts of South America, sweet smells of fruit or honey are said to herald a kind ancestor passing by, checking in on the living. These encounters weave into a shared truth. That scent can be a bridge between worlds, both intimate and terrifying. There are accounts of families who swear they can still smell the pipe tobacco of a grandfather who has been gone for years. At first, it may be comforting, a sign that he lingers to watch over them. But then the visits grow stranger. The smell appears in locked rooms in the middle of the night or at times of stress and grief. Some take it as reassurance. Others begin to feel uneasy, as though the scent is not simply memory, but a hand reaching out from the unknown. Science offers explanations, of course. Phantom smells are recognized in medical fields, often tied to conditions of the brain or nervous system. A person under stress or illness might imagine the presence of smoke, sulfur, or perfume. Memory, too, can trigger scents so strongly that the mind makes them real. Yet for those who have experienced these moments, explanations fall flat. It is not just the smell, it is the feeling that comes with it. A sudden chill, the weight of eyes unseen, the sense that someone has stepped into the room, uninvited, but undeniably there. One particularly chilling story comes from an abandoned hospital where visitors often report the overwhelming odor of disinfectant. The building has been stripped for decades, empty halls where no cleaning products remain. Yet those who enter claim the chemical bite is so strong it burns the throat, forcing them to cover their mouths. In the silence of that hollow place, the scent becomes a ghost in itself, pulling memories of deathbeds, final breaths, and nurses who walked the halls long ago. Some even say the scent grows stronger when a spirit's about to manifest in some other way, as if the smell is a warning before the true encounter arrives. Smells of smoke are among the most frequently reported. A house untouched by fire suddenly fills with the acrid tang of burning wood. Families rush outside, searching for a blaze, only to find nothing. When the smell vanishes as quickly as it came, a realization sinks in. Perhaps it is the echo of a past tragedy, a house fire that once consumed lives, replaying itself in invisible waves. Or perhaps it is a soul caught between worlds, still carrying the scent of its final moments into the present. Even more unsettling are stories where these scents come not as echoes of the past, but as signs of what is yet to come. There are tales of people waking to the scent of smoke hours before their home actually caught fire. Others describe the sharp stench of ozone, as though lightning had struck nearby just before a loved one passed away unexpectedly. In these moments, phantom smells feel like omens, the air itself whispering of fate before it unfolds. The sweet and the foul, the comforting and the terrifying, phantom smells refuse to be dismissed as coincidence. They arrive without warning, linger for moments or hours, and vanish, as though pulled back into the unseen world. Each one leaves behind questions that cannot be answered. Are they messages from the dead, replaying old lives or a warning of danger? Are they fragments of memories so powerful that they imprint themselves on reality? Or are they something darker, a deception, meant to lure the living into unease and fear? The question that haunts most who experience these scents is why they come. Why would something as intangible as smell slip through the boundaries between the living and the dead? Some paranormal investigators believe scents linger because they are a form of residual energy. Just as a place can hold the echo of a sound or the imprint of a memory, so too can it hold the imprint of a scent. Trauma, death, or intense emotion might embed itself into the air, leaving behind a signature that can be triggered long after the event itself. Others suggest that phantom smells are the most intimate form of haunting. Sight and sound are public, available to anyone present. Smell, however, is private and personal. It is tied deeply to the limbic system in the brain, the same place that governs memory and emotion. This may explain why a single fragrance can stir the deepest recollections, why one person might smell roses while another in the same space smells nothing at all. In the realm of hauntings, that makes scent uniquely personal. It becomes a private communication from the unknown, a message only the intended recipient can hear, or rather, smell. One account comes from a small coastal village in Ireland. An elderly woman living alone in a centuries-old cottage began waking at night to the sweet perfume of gardenia. There were no flowers in the house or garden, and the scent never appeared during the day. Locals told her it was the ghost of her late sister, who had loved gardenias above all things and had died in that very home decades earlier. The woman came to accept the scent as a sign of comfort. She said it felt like a presence sitting beside her bed, a reminder that she was not truly alone. Yet there were nights when the fragrance was sharp and almost cloying, arriving in waves so intense it made her dizzy. On those nights, she felt a creeping unease, as though her sister was not there to comfort her, but to warn her of something she could not yet name. Phantom smells are not always gentle. In a grand old manor in England, visitors reported the sudden stench of rotting meat in an otherwise pristine hallway. No explanation was ever found. The smell would appear without pattern, often late at night, and vanish before the cause could be discovered. Over time, the manor gained a reputation among locals as haunted, and the smell became part of its legend. Paranormal researchers visiting the manor suggested it might be tied to the violent death of the manor's former owner centuries ago, a man who perished in mysterious circumstances. Others thought it was the ghost of a servant still bound to the estate, replaying the horror of their final moments. The truth remains elusive, but the experience was enough to make many visitors wary of staying too long in that corridor after dark. There is also the unsettling phenomenon of scents arriving without a clear emotional connection. Not all phantom smells are linked to comfort or warning. Some are simply inexplicable. In an office building in the heart of a bustling city, employees reported the smell of fresh bread wafting through hallways at odd hours. Investigations found no bakery nearby, and the smell could not be traced to any heating or ventilation system. Those who experienced it described it as oddly nostalgic, yet completely unsettling. It lingered in memory long after it disappeared, leaving behind a quiet question. Why this smell in this place at this time? The unpredictability of phantom smells makes them uniquely haunting. They can arrive without warning, fade without explanation, and often leave behind an emotional trace stronger than any visual apparition. For some, it is enough to dismiss them as coincidences or tricks of the mind. But for those who experience them repeatedly, the sensation becomes a part of their reality, something they cannot ignore. A scent becomes more than a smell. It becomes a sign, a presence, a ghostly whisper. Perhaps that is why so many cultures treat phantom smells with reverence or fear. In the Scottish Highlands, there are stories of the smell of the dead, arriving before tragedy, an ancient warning passed down through generations. In parts of Eastern Europe, a sudden floral scent in a graveyard is said to be a blessing from a spirit, a sign of peace in the afterlife. These beliefs endure because there is something primal about scent itself. Unlike sight or sound, smell cannot be turned away from. It is absorbed, carried deep into the body, where it becomes memory, instinct, and emotion all at once. Some believe that this is why spirits use scent as a form of communication. Sight can be fleeting, sound can be ignored, but scent stays. It slips into our consciousness without invitation, lingering until we are forced to acknowledge it. It can bring comfort, dread, or curiosity. It can awaken memories, pull at grief, or warn of something unseen. And in that way, phantom smells become more than an oddity of haunting. They become a language of the dead, a subtle and powerful way for the living and the departed to touch one another. There are those who have tried to document phantom smells in a scientific way, keeping detailed logs of when and where they appear, what kind of scent it is, and what might have preceded it. Paranormal investigators sometimes call this phenomenon olfactory haunting, and they treat it with the same seriousness as unexplained sounds or apparitions. Yet no matter how many cases are recorded, no single explanation satisfies every instance. The experiences are as varied as the scents themselves. Some hauntings are marked by sweetness, lavender, roses, fresh-cut grass, or baking bread. Others are defined by the acrid, smoke, chemicals, rotting flesh. And some scents defy easy description. In one case from a small New England town, a man reported smelling a perfume he could not name. It was floral yet sharp, warm yet unsettling. It appeared most often when he was alone in his attic, and always vanished when he tried to track its source. The man described the experience as both beautiful and terrifying, as if the scent carried a memory he could almost grasp, but never fully remember. For some, phantom smells are comforting. In the rural town of Carlow in Ireland, an old woman living in a stone cottage claimed she regularly smelled her late husband's tobacco pipe. For her, it was proof that he was near, watching over her even after death. She came to welcome it as a quiet blessing, a sign that her love had not ended. Yet even these comforting scents can turn unsettling when they appear in moments of fear or sadness, as though the spirit behind them is not simply visiting, but reacting to something beyond the living world. Then there are the scents that carry warnings. Folklore in many cultures suggests that a sudden and unnatural odor can be a harbinger of death or disaster. In parts of Scotland, the smell of the dead is known as a ghostly omen, appearing in the home before a loved one dies, sometimes days or weeks before the event. In these traditions, the smell is not random, but purposeful. It is a message, a last communication before the spirit moves on. For those who have experienced it, such a scent is difficult to ignore. It lingers not just in the air, but in the mind, stirring a sense of inevitability, a premonition that cannot be easily dismissed. There is an almost universal agreement among those who have experienced phantom smells that they do not come in isolation. They arrive alongside feelings, a sudden chill, a sense of being watched, a shift in the atmosphere. The scent becomes part of a larger moment, a signpost in the strange language of haunting. Some describe it as a memory without a body, a piece of someone that has crossed over into the living world. Others call it an echo of something lost, replaying through the air without cause. Consider the case of a traveler who spent a night in a centuries-old inn on the English coast. At precisely midnight, he was woken by the scent of sea salt mixed with perfume. The smell was sharp and vivid, filling the room so completely he could almost see it. There was no breeze, no open window, no explanation. What made the experience more unnerving was that the scent seemed to cling to the air, lingering for hours. The traveler later learned the inn was built over an old lighthouse, where a keeper had died tragically at sea. Locals whispered that his spirit remained, calling to the living through the scents of the ocean and his lost love's perfume. Phantom smells can also appear in places where no haunting is known. A perfectly ordinary street, a quiet home, or a new building can suddenly be filled with an inexplicable fragrance. In such cases, the mystery is even more unsettling. Without history to anchor the scent, there is no way to tell whether it is a benign memory or an omen. It becomes a riddle, a question left hanging in the air. Those who experience such scents often find themselves searching for answers long after the smell is gone, wondering if they have touched something beyond human understanding. There is a subtle terror in the idea that something as invisible and ephemeral as a scent could be proof of the dead walking among us. Smell does not leave a mark. It cannot be captured on camera, and yet it can stir fear more powerfully than sight or sound. A sudden whiff of smoke in a house that has never known fire can bring a deep unease. The perfuming of someone long gone can fill a room with longing and loss, and the smell of decay can turn the air itself into a warning. Perhaps the most haunting thing about phantom smells is that they slip away so easily. They arrive without announcement and vanish without trace, leaving only memory and a sense that something has shifted. Whether they are messages from the dead, fragments of memory, or a trick of the mind, they remain one of the most mysterious and personal forms of haunting. They are the ghost's whisper in the language of the senses, lingering long enough for us to question the boundary between life and death. There is a subtle poetry in the way phantom smells work. They are fleeting yet unforgettable. They slip through our awareness like a half-remembered dream, touching something deeper than sight or sound ever could. A scent can travel through time in an instant, pulling us back to a moment we thought was lost forever. For the living, this can be comforting. For others, it can be deeply unsettling, a reminder that something unseen still lingers just beyond the veil. In some of the most haunting accounts, phantom smells arrive in connection with death itself. There are countless stories of people who, in the moments before a loved one dies, smell their favorite perfume or cologne. It is not always a scent they expect. Sometimes it is so faint they wonder if it was imagined. But others describe it as unmistakably real, filling a room with an aroma so vivid it is impossible to ignore. These experiences leave behind an emotional imprint, that cannot be explained by science alone. They speak of a moment when the living and the dead seem to touch, just briefly, in a way that transcends the physical world. One chilling case comes from a nursing home in New England, where a nurse described a recurring phenomenon. Residents in certain rooms would wake in the middle of the night, reporting the sudden smell of pipe tobacco, fresh bread, or lilacs. There was no source. The scents appeared and disappeared without pattern. Over time, the nurse began to connect the experiences with the passing of the residents. Each scent seemed to be tied to a particular person's life, emerging in their final hours. It was as though their souls carried their most intimate memories with them, releasing them as parting messages for those left behind. Phantom smells can also appear in ways that defy all logic. In one account from an urban apartment building, a tenant reported smelling burnt toast every evening at exactly 8:47. There was no toast, no kitchen appliance in use, and no explanation from neighbors. The phenomenon persisted for months. The tenant began to dread that time of night, wondering if the smell was a warning, a memory, or something entirely beyond comprehension. When the tenant moved away, the scent ceased. For them, the smell had been tied not just to a place, but to a moment in time that could never be replicated. For those who study hauntings, phantom smells are a reminder that the supernatural often bypasses the senses we rely on most. Sight can be obscured, sounds can be ignored, but scent is immediate. It invades without consent, bypassing rational thought and touching something primal. That is why it can be so unsettling. It enters without warning, lingers without cause, and vanishes without explanation. And once it is gone, it leaves behind a question far heavier than the scent itself. Why was it there at all? There are places where phantom smells have become part of the very identity of the haunting. Old houses with names, abandoned hospitals with corridors that seem to breathe with memories, battlefields where the air still carries the tang of smoke centuries later. These are places where scent becomes part of the story, where it is not just an oddity, but a defining feature of the haunting. Visitors come to expect it, almost to search for it, because it is proof that the dead still have a way of speaking to us. There is also a certain terror in how indiscriminate phantom smells can be. They do not always follow logic or pattern. They can appear in grand ballrooms and empty attics, in crowded streets and solitary bedrooms. They do not announce themselves, they arrive quietly, a subtle shift in the air that goes unnoticed until it is gone. And once they vanish, they leave nothing but memory, an echo of something that cannot be pinned down, as though the dead have sent us a message they never meant for us to fully understand. Perhaps that is the essence of phantom smells. They are not proofs. They are invitations. They are questions left hanging in the air. A scent without origin that pulls us toward something beyond reason. Whether they are memory, warning, comfort, or trick, they remain one of the most intimate ways the living and the dead can touch one another. And so we come to understand that in the strange language of hauntings, scent is a whisper. It is a presence felt without being seen, a touch that lingers in the mind long after it has vanished from the air. To encounter a phantom smell is to be reminded that death does not always mean the end. That sometimes, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, something unseen still walks among us and speaks in the most unexpected of ways. There is something profoundly intimate about scent. Unlike sound, which fades with distance, or sight, which can be explained away, smell carries with it an unshakable connection to memory and emotion. In hauntings, scent becomes one of the most personal signs of presence. For some spirits, the language they choose to speak is fragrance. Sweet perfumes, soft floral notes, the gentle scent of a particular flower often become the calling card of those who have crossed over. These are not the acrid or unsettling odors of decay, but scents that linger like a memory, soft and poignant, reaching deep into the hearts of the living. Across cultures and centuries, there are stories of departed loved ones returning not as shapes or voices, but as fragrance. The smell of lavender in a quiet room, the scent of roses drifting through a corridor long after the blooms have died. These fragrances are more than just smells. They are reminders of a life once lived, a soul still near. In some traditions, sweet scents are seen as blessings, tokens of love and peace. They are thought to be the spirit's way of telling us they are close, watching over us, or offering comfort in times of grief. One of the most famous cases comes from a small town in France, where a family experienced repeated visits from what they described as their deceased grandmother. The first time it happened, they were sitting together in the living room when a sudden scent of lilacs filled the air. There were no flowers in the house, no perfume bottles nearby, nothing to account for it. The scent lasted for several minutes before fading. Over the following weeks, the same fragrance would appear at moments of significance, when the family was gathered in sorrow, when someone was ill, or when important decisions had to be made. The family came to regard the scent as a sign, a way their grandmother continued to communicate her presence and offer reassurance. Sweet perfumes in hauntings are often tied to memories that are deeply personal. A particular scent can be so closely linked to a person that its sudden arrival feels like more than coincidence. For some, it is a comfort, a quiet touch from beyond. For others, it is a mystery that can be unsettling precisely because it cannot be explained. How can something so specific arrive unbidden? How can the air carry the perfume of someone who has long since gone? These questions linger in the minds of those who experience such moments, and the answers remain elusive. There are numerous accounts where sweet scents appear alongside visions or sensations of the departed. In an old manor house in England, visitors reported smelling the delicate perfume of roses in certain rooms, especially those tied to the history of the house. Some who experienced it said they also felt a sudden warmth, a sense of being watched, as though a presence was quietly standing beside them. Others said they saw shapes, fleeting figures clothed in shadow, and that the scent seemed to be attached to those appearances, lingering even after the vision had gone. For those who believe in the afterlife, these scents become a form of evidence, proof that the departed continue to exist in some form. In Japan, there are stories of spirits called kaorimono, whose presence is announced by the smell of incense, cherry blossoms, or camphor. In certain cases, the fragrance becomes so strong that it fills entire rooms, even when no source exists. It is said to be the spirit's way of bridging worlds, a way of saying they are still here without disturbing the balance of the living world too much. There is something profoundly unsettling about a scent arriving without cause, even when it is sweet. A fragrance tied to a person who has passed away is at once comforting and eerie. Comforting because it feels like love lingering beyond death. Eerie because it forces the living to face something beyond understanding. The very act of smelling something without explanation invites questions about the nature of reality and what lies beyond. It challenges the boundary between the physical and the spiritual, leaving those who experience it with a sense that something extraordinary has touched their lives. One haunting account comes from a woman living in an old apartment building in Prague. She began to notice a faint scent of roses appearing late at night. It was always in her bedroom, never elsewhere in the building. At first she dismissed it as imagination, until it began to appear at times of deep sorrow, moments when she would dream of her late mother. She began to wonder if the scent was not her imagination at all, but a deliberate visitation. Over time, the scent became a part of her grieving process. It was not frightening, but deeply personal. A gentle presence in the dark, a reminder that love can transcend the silence of death. These stories, scattered across time and place, share a common truth. Sweet perfumes and hauntings are rarely random. They arrive at moments of meaning. They appear where memory runs deepest. They are whispers that linger, an unspoken communication from beyond. For some, they are blessings, proof of connection. For others, they are mysteries that refuse to be explained, subtle signs of a presence that is still watching, still caring, and still lingering in the world of the living. These fragrances, whether floral, herbal, or uniquely personal, often carry meaning far beyond the moment they appear. For many who experience them, they are not merely scents, but messages. They arrive without explanation, often in moments of vulnerability, late at night during grief, or in times of quiet solitude. In those moments, they are more than perfume. They are the voice of the unseen, the proof of a presence that cannot be touched but can be sensed. In some cases, these scents are tied to love that refuses to fade. There is a story from a coastal village in Wales where a widow reported the sudden scent of honeysuckle filling her bedroom years after her husband had passed. The aroma was unmistakable to her, the same her husband had worn in life. She began to notice it most often on nights when she was troubled, as though her husband's spirit was offering comfort. To her, the scent was a quiet conversation, a reassurance that even in death, love endures. Others find sweet perfumes and hauntings more unsettling than comforting. There are tales of fragrances appearing in places where they should not, in ways that cannot be explained. In a historic hotel in Vienna, guests have reported the sudden scent of gardenias drifting through hallways late at night. No flowers are grown nearby, no scent diffusers are in use, and housekeeping confirms there is no source. Yet the fragrance arrives with unsettling regularity. Some guests have said they felt a presence in those hallways, as if the scent itself was a marker of something unseen. In many hauntings, sweet perfumes are connected to specific individuals. The scent becomes a signature, a kind of ghostly fingerprint. It may be tied to a person's identity in life, their favorite perfume, the smell of their clothes, the fragrance of their garden. This makes the experience intensely personal. A whiff of such a scent can be more powerful than a vision or a voice because it touches memory directly. It slips past reason and becomes an unshakable truth. There are documented cases where the scent of a departed person lingers for days, even weeks. In a village in southern Italy, a family reported smelling fresh violets in their home long after the death of their grandmother. The scent would appear at different times, strongest at night, and vanish with the first light of dawn. Neighbors came to speak of the smell of Nonna, as if the fragrance had become her presence. To them, it was not a haunting of fear, but of remembrance, a perfume that carried love across the threshold of death. There are also tales where such fragrances appear without any emotional connection, and yet leave a deep mark. A man living in a new apartment in Tokyo began to smell sandalwood at certain times of night. He could not explain it. There was no incense, no perfumes in the building, and no pattern he could discern. Yet the scent persisted for months. It became something he could not ignore, something that drew him to wonder whether it was the spirit of someone trying to reach him, or something even stranger, an echo of a moment that never truly ended. These experiences suggest that sweet perfumes in hauntings are not random accidents of air and memory. They appear with purpose. They come to those who need them, whether as comfort, warning, or remembrance. For some, they arrive in grief, offering solace without words. For others, they arrive as mysteries, subtle signs that something beyond our understanding has touched the living world. In the quiet moments when such scents arrive, the living often find themselves standing at the edge of something they cannot name. They feel a presence that cannot be seen, a voice that cannot be heard, and a memory that cannot be forgotten. The scent becomes proof that death does not erase connection. It becomes a bridge between worlds, and a reminder that even in absence, love can leave its mark. Perhaps this is why stories of sweet perfumes and hauntings endure. They are not just tales of scent, but of longing and memory. They remind us that the dead may still speak, not in words, but in fragrances that touch the soul. And in that delicate language of perfume, they leave behind a whisper, "You are not forgotten." There is a pattern in many hauntings where sweet perfumes appear most vividly during moments of deep emotion. Grief, joy, fear, and longing all seem to draw these fragrances into the air. For those who have experienced it, the scent is more than an aroma, it is an emotional message. It is as though the departed have learned to speak through the senses, using fragrance as a way to cross the divide that death has placed between them and the living. One particularly haunting example comes from a small town in southern France. A woman living alone in an old stone house began to smell violets on quiet nights. At first, she thought it was a trick of memory, but the scent became a constant presence, always arriving at moments of solitude or distress. She later discovered that violets had been her mother's favorite flower, a detail she had almost forgotten. In the quiet of her home, she came to believe that the scent was her mother's way of offering comfort, a fragrant presence that bridged the gap between life and death. Sweet perfumes in hauntings often have a dreamlike quality. They appear without warning, fade without explanation, and linger in memory long after they have gone. This makes them different from any other form of haunting. A shadow can be dismissed as a trick of light, a sound as the wind in an old house. But a scent is harder to deny. It is physical, yet elusive. It comes without form, and yet leaves behind something tangible, a feeling, a memory, a question. In certain traditions, sweet fragrances are not just signs of presence, but omens of comfort. In parts of Ireland, for example, the sudden scent of flowers in an empty home is said to be the blessing of a departed loved one. In Japan, the fragrance of cherry blossoms is believed to carry messages from spirits, especially those who have died young. These beliefs speak to something universal, the idea that scent can be a language in itself, a way for the dead to speak without words. There are even stories where sweet perfumes seem to act as a link between worlds, a sign that something unseen has crossed into the living realm. In a manor house in England, visitors report the fragrance of roses appearing most often in a particular bedroom. It is a subtle scent, never overpowering, but unmistakable. Some say it is the lingering presence of a former resident, a woman who died there over a century ago. Others believe it is a comfort offered to those who sleep in the room, a way of saying that they are not alone. For those who encounter such scents, the experience is often deeply personal. It is not merely about the fragrance itself, but what it represents. For some, it is a reminder of love that endures. For others, it is a mystery, a puzzle without answer. And for many, it becomes a part of their own story, something they carry with them as a memory that cannot be explained. There is also the unsettling aspect of how these scents can appear without any obvious connection. In a quiet apartment building in Prague, residents reported smelling lilac at odd hours with no flowers in the building and no discernible source. Some dismissed it as imagination. Others believed it was a message from someone who had lived there long before them. The scent became a kind of mystery that bound the residents together, a shared experience they could not fully explain. What makes sweet perfumes in haunting so compelling is their dual nature. They can be comforting and unsettling at once. They remind us of what we have lost and of what may still linger. They touch something deep within us, stirring memory, emotion, and mystery all at once. They do not scream for attention. They arrive quietly, in the spaces between breaths, as if the dead are whispering just beyond our hearing. Perhaps this is why so many people describe these scents as both a blessing and a haunting. They are blessings because they speak of love, remembrance, and connection. They are hauntings because they arrive without explanation, challenging the boundaries between life and death. They are proof, perhaps, that scent is a language the dead have mastered, a way of reaching the living without the need for words or form. In the moments when such fragrances appear, the living are reminded of the fragility of presence. A perfume that drifts through an empty room, a scent that fades before it can be explained, becomes a kind of proof that the dead are not gone entirely. They remain in memory and scent, in something far more subtle than sight or sound. They remain in the quiet fragrance that touches us without warning and then leaves us with the undeniable certainty that something unseen is still near. There is an almost sacred quality to the way sweet perfumes arrive in hauntings. They do not announce themselves with noise or spectacle. They slip into the air quietly like a memory that has found its way back to life. For those who encounter them, the experience is often deeply emotional, as though a spirit has found a way to reach across the divide and offer comfort in the language it knows best. Many who have experienced such fragrances speak of them as moments of connection. A scent appears, carrying with it the presence of someone gone. It lingers for moments that feel like minutes, and then disappears, leaving behind a memory that burns more vividly than the scent itself. It is as though the departed are speaking to the living in a language made of fragrance, and we are left to interpret their message. One of the most moving accounts comes from a woman in a small village in Italy. Her husband died unexpectedly, leaving her in a state of grief she could not escape. Months later, she began to smell the scent of roses in her home. It was soft, delicate, and unmistakably familiar. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but the scent persisted, appearing at moments when she was most in need of comfort, when she was alone, when sadness filled the air, when she was unable to sleep. To her, the fragrance was a gift, a sign that her husband's love had not ended, that he had found a way to stay close. These scents, when they appear, become more than a simple smell. They become symbols. They become messages woven to the air, carrying meaning that cannot be contained in words. For some, they are blessings, a soft perfume arriving in a time of need. For others, they are mysteries that cannot be explained, whispers from a world beyond our own. And for all who experience them, they leave a lasting impression, a quiet proof that death does not mean the end of connection. There are places where such fragrances are said to be a constant presence. Old houses, temples, and gardens where the air itself seems steeped in scent. In certain parts of the world, this is not seen as unusual. In Japan, there are shrines where the smell of incense is said to be the breath of the departed. In parts of India, sweet floral fragrances in temples are believed to be offerings from the spirits themselves. These traditions speak to something universal, the idea that scent is a language older than speech, one that can cross the boundary between life and death. Yet the mystery remains. Even in the most documented cases, there is no clear explanation for why these scents appear. They are not always tied to objects, not always linked to a visible presence. They arrive without cause and vanish without trace. That is what makes them so haunting. A scent that cannot be explained becomes a reminder that the world holds mysteries that cannot be reduced to reason. For those who live with these experiences, the scents become a part of their own story. They speak of memory, loss, longing, and love. They remind us that even in absence there can be presence. Even in silence there can be a message. They remind us that the dead have their own ways of speaking, and that sometimes the language they choose is one that touches the soul in the quietest way possible. There is also a subtle unease that comes with these scents. Even the most comforting perfume carries a question. Why now? Why this scent in this moment? In many hauntings, the fragrance is not merely a sign of presence. It is an invitation to remember, to question, to wonder. It is a reminder that the boundary between worlds is thin, and that the dead may be closer than we think. Some who have experienced these fragrances say they never forget them. The scent becomes etched in memory, a fragment of another world. It returns not only in moments of haunting, but in dreams, in quiet recollections, in times when memory stirs without warning. To smell the perfume of the departed is to be touched by something beyond the living, a reminder that some part of those we have lost lingers still, speaking to us in the language of scent. Perhaps that is why the stories endure. Sweet perfumes of the departed are not simply hauntings. They are proof of connection, of love, of memory. They are whispers that arrive without warning, reminders that even in death, presence endures. In that fragile, fleeting fragrance lies something powerful. The idea that the ones we have lost have not truly gone, but walk beside us still, speaking softly in the language they know best. There is something elemental about the scent of smoke. It is the smell of transformation, of endings, of something that once was becoming something else entirely. In the world of hauntings, the smell of smoke or ash is among the most unsettling phenomena. It is not simply a fragrance. It is a presence, a message, a warning. Unlike the sweet perfumes of the departed, smoke carries with it a harsher, more primal language. It speaks of destruction and loss, of tragedy that refuses to fade. For centuries, witnesses of hauntings have reported sudden, inexplicable scents of smoke in places untouched by flame. They appear without warning, lingering in corridors, rooms, or open spaces, vanishing as suddenly as they arrived. Sometimes the scent is faint, like distant campfire smoke carried on a breeze. Other times it is sharp and choking, as though a fire still burns somewhere unseen. These scents often accompany other phenomena: a sudden drop in temperature, the feeling of being watched, or the sound of footsteps in an empty space. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a centuries-old inn in Scotland. Guests have reported waking at night to the smell of burning wood, even when there was no fireplace in use and no fire anywhere nearby. The scent would drift through the hallways and settle in certain rooms. Many described it as unsettling, not because it was dangerous, but because it felt deliberate. Those who experienced it often spoke of seeing flickers of shadow at the edge of vision, of feeling a presence just beyond reach. For them, the scent of smoke was not random. It was a signal, a voice from another time calling out in the language of the senses. There is a certain universality to this phenomenon. Across cultures and continents, the scent of smoke appears in stories of haunting. In some traditions, it is seen as the breath of restless spirits, an echo of a life consumed in fire. In Japan, smoke in certain shrines is believed to be the spirit of a departed samurai, lingering as a sign of unfinished duty. In parts of Eastern Europe, the smell of smoke is said to foretell disaster or death, appearing without cause as a warning to the living. This deep-rooted association between smoke and the supernatural suggests that the phenomenon is more than coincidence. One of the most haunting qualities of smoke is a phantom scent. is its immediacy. It is not subtle in its presence. When it appears, it fills the air, invades the senses, and leaves a mark that cannot be ignored. For those who encounter it, the experience is visceral. It is not just a smell. It is a moment in which the boundaries of reality feel thinner. It is an intrusion of something beyond understanding into the everyday world. In certain cases, the scent of smoke in hauntings is tied to places with a history of fire and destruction. Abandoned homes, war-torn ruins, and battlefields often carry this olfactory echo. Visitors to such places sometimes describe the smell of charred wood, burning fabric, or ashes in the air, even when the site has been untouched for decades. It is as though the very memory of the fire has been preserved in the air, waiting for someone to awaken it. One notable example comes from a farmhouse in rural New England. The building had stood empty for decades, a silent relic of another era. Neighbors reported that on certain nights, the scent of burning straw would drift from the house, even though there was no fire anywhere nearby. Those who dared to enter described a heavy stillness, the air thick with the scent, and the faint impression of movement just beyond their sight. Over time, the farmhouse gained a reputation as haunted, the smell of fire becoming part of its legend. The smell of smoke in hauntings is not always tied to the past. Sometimes it arrives as a warning. There are countless stories of people smelling smoke before discovering that a fire has broken out somewhere nearby, even when they were miles away. In these cases, the scent feels prophetic, a strange warning carried by forces beyond understanding. It is as though the fragrance itself is a message, a way for the unseen to speak through the senses. This scent carries weight because it speaks of loss. Fire consumes, changes, erases. To smell smoke without fire is to be reminded of something destroyed, something left behind only in memory. It is a haunting that comes without sight or sound, and yet leaves behind something more profound, a sense of presence that cannot be explained away. The smell of smoke in hauntings does not always announce itself with intensity. Sometimes it arrives subtly, like a whisper on the air, a faint trace that is almost easy to ignore. It may slip into a room without warning, unnoticed until it lingers just long enough to draw attention. It is in those quiet moments that the scent becomes most unsettling. A faint trace of smoke in a room with no fireplace, a whiff of ash in the middle of a hallway, a distant aroma that seems to come from nowhere. These are experiences that linger in memory long after the scent has vanished. There are stories of smoke appearing in places that have no history of fire, as though it is a message untethered from time or logic. In an apartment building in Berlin, tenants on different floors reported the smell of burnt wood at various times, with no fire, no heating systems running, and no source to explain it. Some dismissed it as coincidence, but others began to speak of it as a shared haunting, a phenomenon that tied the building together in mystery. Those who experienced it described a strange heaviness in the air, as if the scent carried weight far beyond its physical presence. The scent of smoke is often tied to memory. It is a smell that burns itself into the mind, binding itself to moments of fear, grief, or awe. In many cases, those who encounter it recall the exact circumstances of the first time it appeared. It becomes a marker in their own personal history, a moment they return to again and again. Some speak of it as a sign that something has been left unfinished, a presence that lingers because it cannot rest. One of the most haunting cases comes from a battlefield in Eastern Europe. Soldiers long gone, buried in unknown graves, are said to leave behind the scent of smoke on nights when the wind shifts just so. Visitors describe walking across the field and suddenly being enveloped in the sharp tang of burning wood, as though the battle itself were replaying in memory. The smell smell does not last long, vanishing within moments. But those who have experienced it speak of a deep, lingering unease. For them, the scent is not simply a reminder of the past. It is an echo of something that still lives there, unseen but persistent. In some hauntings, smoke is paired with visions of shadow or movement. Witnesses describe feeling a presence at the same moment the scent appears, a sensation of breath on the neck, a flicker of light, or a distant rumble. The scent becomes part of a larger moment of contact, a signal that something unseen is near. These are not experiences easily dismissed. They leave a trace in memory, a sensation that is carried long after the smell has gone. There are also accounts where the scent of smoke appears without warning and without any connection to tragedy or history. In a quiet suburb of New York, a woman reported waking one night to the scent of burning leaves. There was no fire nearby, and the weather offered no explanation. The smell returned sporadically over several weeks, each time bringing with it a strange sense of foreboding. The woman began to keep a journal, noting when the scent appeared and what had happened that day. Over time, she began to believe it was a warning, though of what, she could not say. What makes these experiences so powerful is the way the scent of smoke bypasses the mind. Sight can be questioned, sound can be doubted, but scent enters directly into memory and feeling. It cannot be ignored once it arrives. It is physical and intangible all at once, a haunting that cannot be touched, yet leaves a presence that is undeniable. For those who have experienced it, the smell of smoke is not just an olfactory phenomenon. It is a moment of communion. It is a presence, speaking without words, a warning without explanation, a memory without form. It is proof that the air itself can hold echoes of the past, and that those echoes can return as sudden and unexplained as a flicker of shadow in the dark. The smell of smoke in hauntings often carries with it a strange sense of memory, as though it has been carried across time. It is not just the scent of burning wood or ash. It is the scent of moments long past, preserved in the air like an echo. Those who experience it often speak of the way it seems to carry history, as if every whiff contains the story of its own making. In certain cases, the appearance of this scent is tied to particular times of day or night. A house in rural Ireland became the subject of local legend when occupants began to notice the smell of charred wood every evening at dusk. It was never accompanied by smoke they could see, nor by a fire anywhere nearby. Locals came to speak of it as the evening fire, a silent haunting that arrived with the falling of darkness. Those who experienced it described an inexplicable heaviness in the air, as if the scent itself carried the weight of unseen presence. The scent of smoke in hauntings can also be linked to deep loss. Fire consumes and transforms, leaving only remnants behind. In some stories, the smell of smoke is the lingering breath of that destruction, a reminder that what has been lost is not entirely gone. In an old manor in northern Italy, visitors have reported smelling burning oak in a hall where a devastating fire once claimed lives. There are no sources of smoke, yet the scent persists in certain corners of the house. To those who know the history, the fragrance becomes a haunting memorial, a scent that carries the grief of the past. There are times when smoke arrives as part of a larger haunting, accompanied by sounds, shadows, or sudden changes in temperature. Witnesses speak of the scent appearing at the exact moment they feel a presence, as though it is the spirit's chosen way of announcing itself. In an abandoned theater in Prague, visitors often describe the faint scent of burning velvet, mingled with ash, appearing at the same time. They hear the faint creak of footsteps on an empty stage. The scent becomes a signature of the haunting, a sensory echo that ties together sight, sound, and memory. The smell of smoke in these cases is not simply a reminder of something that happened. It becomes part of the haunting itself. It is a presence that cannot be ignored, a marker that something unseen is there. For those who have encountered it, the scent can bring both fear and fascination. It is unsettling precisely because it cannot be explained. There is no flame, no embers, no logical cause, and yet the smell is undeniable, carried on the air like a ghost itself. There is a subtle danger in smoke as a phantom scent. Fire is an element of destruction, and its scent carries a primal warning. Those who encounter it often speak of a sudden tension in the air, a sense that something is about to happen. In some traditions, the scent of smoke is a portent, a warning of change or disaster. In parts of Eastern Europe, it is said that a phantom smell of burning wood can herald death or misfortune, arriving without cause as a message from beyond. Perhaps this is why so many describe these experiences as unforgettable. The scent of smoke leaves an imprint in memory that sight or sound rarely can. It is physical, yet intangible, a haunting that cannot be touched, but cannot be ignored. It is a reminder that the past lingers, that loss leaves a trace, and that some presences choose scent as their language. There is also a strange intimacy to the scent of smoke. It does not shout or demand attention. It slips quietly into the air, curling around those who notice it. It invites the living to question what they know of the world, to wonder what lies beyond the senses they trust most. To smell smoke where there should be none is to stand at the threshold of mystery, to sense something beyond explanation. In that moment, the scent becomes something more than smoke. It becomes a bridge between past and present, life and death, memory and haunting. It becomes proof that even when flames have faded, something of them remains. And in that lingering scent is the quiet certainty that the air itself can remember, that the world can carry echoes of what once was, and that those echoes can return to us, carried on a breath of smoke. The smell of smoke in hauntings has a way of lingering in the mind long after the air has cleared. For those who have experienced it, the scent is not just an encounter. It is a moment etched into memory. It becomes something that cannot be forgotten, a fragment of another world that refuses to fade. It is a haunting not of sight or sound, but of smell, and that makes it uniquely powerful. There is a story from an old church in Romania that speaks to this strange persistence. The building had stood for centuries, and among its whispered tales was that of a scent that appeared without cause. Parishioners described waking to the faint smell of burning incense in the middle of the night, a fragrance unlike any known in the church. There was no fire, no incense being burned, and no explanation. The scent would linger for hours before fading. For many, it became a sign, a mysterious reminder that something unseen had passed through the place, leaving behind its trace in smoke. The smell of smoke can also be tied to unresolved events, to moments where life ended abruptly. In many hauntings, it is as if the scent preserves the memory of a fire that was never fully extinguished. In an old factory in Detroit, visitors often speak of the sudden scent of scorched metal and ash, despite the building being empty for decades. Those who have experienced it speak of it as more than a smell. It is a presence, an echo of something that happened long ago, replaying silently in the air. There is a certain poetry in this phenomenon. Fire destroys, yet its scent can linger like a memory. It becomes an invisible remnant of something that once was. In hauntings, this scent transforms into a language, one that communicates without words. It is a whisper in the air, a message carried on currents of time, telling those who smell it that the past is never truly gone. Some hauntings pair the scent of smoke with visions of the past, as though the fragrance is a doorway to memory. Witnesses have described sudden encounters with smells that transport them to another time and place. A woman in a small New England town reported smelling smoke and ash in her home one evening, and at the same moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of being somewhere else entirely, somewhere consumed by fire, yet strangely distant. She later discovered that decades before, her house had stood on the site of a great fire that had consumed an entire neighborhood. For her, the scent was not just a haunting, it was a bridge to history, a fragment of a moment preserved in the air. The sense of foreboding that comes with phantom smoke is difficult to ignore. In many cultures, the smell of smoke without fire is seen as a warning. It is said to herald change, danger, or death. In parts of Eastern Europe, the sudden scent of burning wood is believed to mean that a spirit is trying to warn the living. Whether or not one believes in such traditions, those who have encountered the scent cannot deny its uncanny ability to stir unease. There is also a strange intimacy to this haunting phenomenon. Smoke does not shout. It does not force itself upon you. It drifts quietly, unannounced, curling into your senses without permission. And then it is gone, leaving only its memory behind. That memory carries weight, because scent is one of the most powerful triggers of emotion. A single whiff can transport a person to another time, another place, another state of being. In hauntings, the scent of smoke carries the same power. It transports the living to a moment that belongs to the dead. For those who encounter it, smoke becomes a story in itself. It is a reminder that presence is not always visible, that memory can live in scent, that destruction can leave behind something inexplicably enduring. It is proof that even when the flames have died, something of them remains. Perhaps this is the most unsettling truth about phantom smoke. It cannot be explained, it cannot be captured, and it cannot be ignored. It slips quietly into the air, carrying with it the weight of loss, memory, and warning. It is an echo of something beyond understanding, a presence that speaks without form, and a reminder that the air we breathe can hold traces of the past, waiting for the moment when they will return. In the lingering smell of smoke, there is both fear and wonder. It is the scent of endings and beginnings, of absence and presence, of life and whatever lies beyond it. It is the language of fire transformed into a whisper that drifts through the world of the living, calling to us in the quietest way possible. There is something profoundly unsettling about the scent of decay. It carries with it the unmistakable signature of endings, a primal reminder that life is temporary. In hauntings, the smell of rot is one of the most disturbing phenomena. It is not merely a fragrance, it is an atmosphere. It carries an emotional weight that few other phantom scents can match, for it speaks directly to our fear of death and what comes after. Reports of this scent appear across cultures and throughout history. Those who experience it rarely describe it as neutral. It is almost always accompanied by unease, dread, or fear. The smell of rot is visceral. It bypasses reason and settles deep within the body. It is physical, emotional, and spiritual all at once. There is a malice to it that makes it unlike the sweet perfumes of departed souls or the distant smoke of unseen fires. Decay carries a message that is hard to ignore. Something is not right. One of the most famous hauntings associated with this phenomenon comes from a centuries-old manor in England. For decades, guests and staff have reported sudden, inexplicable bursts of a foul, decaying scent in certain rooms. These occurrences are unpredictable, yet persistent. Those who have entered the affected rooms speak of a heaviness in the air, a coldness that seeps into the bones. Many describe feeling watched, and some have even reported seeing shadowy figures or hearing low, incomprehensible whispers. To those who experience it, the scent is not accidental. It is an active presence, an expression of something malevolent lingering within the walls. The smell of rot is not tied to one type of haunting. It appears in homes, graveyards, forests, and abandoned buildings. What unites these stories is the way the scent arrives without physical cause. In a woodland outside of Poland, hikers reported the smell of rotting flesh on clear autumn days when there was nothing nearby to explain it. The smell would appear suddenly, thick and heavy, and then vanish without a trace. Those who experienced it spoke of an instinctive dread, as though the scent was a warning from something unseen. In many hauntings, the smell of decay is more than a fragrance. It is a signal of presence. It is an announcement that something has crossed into the living world. Some folkloric traditions treat this scent as proof of spirits who have not found peace, those who remain tied to the world by suffering or vengeance. In parts of the American South, the smell of rot is linked to restless spirits in cemeteries, thought to be the breath of the dead seeking release. In these tales, the scent is not a random byproduct of haunting. It is a purposeful expression of unrest. There is a particularly chilling aspect to this phenomenon. The way the scent of decay seems to carry intent. Witnesses often describe it as more than a smell. It feels like an act. In an abandoned hospital in Germany, visitors report sudden, powerful waves of rot that seem to follow them from room to room. Those who enter say the scent feels like it is searching for them, a presence moving in the air. Some believe it is a warning. Others think it is a form of malice, a spirit marking its territory. The smell of decay is unique among phantom scents because it awakens a deep, primal fear. It reminds us of mortality in the most physical way possible. While sweet perfumes of departed souls may speak of love and remembrance, and smoke may speak of destruction or warning, the scent of rot speaks of endings that are final, of a corruption that cannot be undone. It carries with it the inevitability of death and the darkness that comes after. In some hauntings, the scent of decay appears alongside other unsettling phenomena. Shadows, sudden chills, and feelings of dread. In a remote farmhouse in France, the scent would often appear just before strange disturbances, objects moving of their own accord, footsteps in empty rooms, whispers that could not be traced. To those who lived there, the smell was not simply unpleasant. It was an omen, a signal that something unseen was drawing near. There are places where the smell of decay has become part of the legend itself. Ancient ruins, forgotten crypts, and cursed forests are often described as carrying a perpetual scent of rot. In such places, the smell is woven into the atmosphere, as though it has become a part of the land itself. Visitors speak of it not as a fleeting encounter, but as an ever-present reality, a reminder that some places carry their own dark histories in ways that cannot be erased. What makes the scent of decay so powerful is its ability to affect the mind as much as the senses. It is not merely unpleasant. It is disturbing in a way that words can barely capture. It speaks to something primal, a fear older than memory. It is a scent that reminds us we are mortal, and that death is never as far away as we think. The smell of decay in hauntings is rarely a passive occurrence. It has a way of finding those who are most sensitive to it, as though it knows where to speak. Many who have experienced it report that it appears in moments of solitude or vulnerability, when they are alone in a dark hallway, walking through a forgotten forest, or standing at the threshold of a graveyard. The scent arrives without warning, as if it has chosen that precise moment to announce itself. There's a story from a remote fishing village in Norway that captures this chilling quality. Fishermen returning from sea at night spoke of a foul scent that would suddenly appear on the docks. It was described as the smell of rotting seaweed, mixed with something far darker. Those who encountered it reported feeling watched, a cold pressure in the air and a heaviness in their limbs. Locals came to believe that the scent was the breath of something lurking beneath the water, a spirit tied to the deep, a presence as old as the sea itself. For them, the smell was not merely unpleasant. It was proof of something alive in the shadows. The sense of malice that comes with this scent is not always explained by folklore alone. In many modern hauntings, decay seems to be the scent of anger, of unrest, of unfinished business. Unlike other phantom fragrances, it does not tend to carry messages of comfort or memory. Instead, it carries warning, dread, and sometimes something that feels almost deliberate. It is as though the scent itself has purpose, a way of marking a presence, of establishing ownership of a place. In some cases, the smell of rot is tied to violence. There are numerous accounts of this phenomenon in places where death came suddenly or violently. Old battlegrounds, sites of massacres, and houses with histories of murder often carry reports of phantom decay. In such places, the scent is not simply a haunting, it is a relic of suffering. It is the lingering breath of a moment steeped in violence, preserved in the air as an echo of what once was. A small town in rural Russia is known for such a haunting. A house at the edge of the village was the scene of a violent crime decades ago. Those who entered claim that the faint scent of rot appears in certain rooms at particular times, often without warning. It is strongest at night, lingering like a shadow, and is sometimes accompanied by a chill that makes the skin crawl. Locals avoid the house after dusk, believing it to be cursed. To them, the smell is not a coincidence. It is a presence, a warning, and a marker of malice. The scent of decay is a haunting that speaks to something deep within human perception. It touches primal fears of mortality, corruption, and the unknown. Where sweet fragrances speak of memory and smoke speaks of warning, decay speaks of something final and unfathomable. It is the fragrance of absence, of endings, and of something that refuses to rest. This is why it is often accompanied by an emotional response stronger than other hauntings. People describe a visceral reaction, a tightening in the chest, a shiver that travels down the spine, an instinctive urge to flee. It is a scent that bypasses thought and moves straight to instinct, awakening something ancient and fearful. It is not just a haunting, it is a confrontation with the unknown. Some have suggested that the scent of decay in hauntings is tied to the energy of the departed. In certain traditions, spirits who have died in pain or violence cannot rest, and their presence carries with it a residue of that suffering. The smell of rot, then, becomes a kind of signature of unrest, a sensory trace of malice that cannot be erased. Whether this is true or simply the way human perception interprets such experiences, there is no denying the power of the phenomenon. What makes these encounters so haunting is the way they linger in memory. The scent of decay is not easily forgotten. It becomes part of the story of the haunting, a detail that people return to again and again. It becomes a marker of the presence, as undeniable as a shadow in the corner of the eye or a whisper in the dark. For those who have experienced it, the scent is more than a smell. It is a presence. It is a message. It is an echo of something that cannot be explained but cannot be denied. The smell of decay in hauntings is rarely an isolated experience. It often arrives as part of a cluster of strange occurrences, a sudden chill in the air, a whisper that cannot be traced, or a shadow that moves without cause. In such moments, the scent becomes part of a larger tapestry of the supernatural, a strand in the fabric of something unseen yet deeply felt. In a remote village in the Scottish Highlands, there is a house infamous for such phenomena. Visitors who step inside on certain nights report the sudden arrival of a foul, rotting scent. It appears without warning, filling rooms with an oppressive heaviness. Many who have stayed there recount the sensation of being watched, the faint sound of footsteps, and the inexplicable sense that something is breathing close beside them. For those who have experienced it, the smell is not just a warning. It is an announcement of presence, a declaration that the house itself is alive with something otherworldly. The presence of malice that decay brings is difficult to articulate. It is not simply unpleasant. It is charged with something ancient and purposeful. Unlike other phantom scents that speak of memory or loss, decay often feels like a claim. It is as though the presence behind it is staking a claim to the space it inhabits. It is an assertion of existence, a silent but potent declaration that something unseen still holds power here. There are places where this scent appears so frequently that it becomes part of the identity of the location itself. In certain cemeteries in Eastern Europe, visitors speak of a constant presence of rot in the air, even in the absence of any obvious cause. Locals speak of it as the breath of the restless dead, an ever-present reminder of the boundaries between the living and the dead. The scent becomes woven to the atmosphere, as inseparable from the place as the gravestones themselves. In some hauntings, decay manifests not just as a smell, but as a layered experience. Witnesses speak of entering a room and being met with the odor of rotting flesh, decaying earth, and something else, something intangible, deeper, almost ancient. It is a scent that feels layered with meaning, carrying with it not only the physical reality of decay, but also the weight of emotion, memory, and malice. One chilling account comes from an abandoned asylum in the northern United States. Visitors have described entering the building only to be struck by the sudden, overwhelming stench of decay. It would arrive without warning, thick and choking, lingering in certain corridors and rooms. Those who encountered it spoke of a profound unease, of the sense that the air itself was watching them. For many, it was as though the building was breathing, exhaling its own memory of pain and suffering. There is something deeply primal about the way humans react to this scent. Decay is a signal embedded in our very survival instinct. It speaks of danger, of death, and of corruption. In the world of hauntings, the smell of rot taps directly into that instinct. It bypasses thought, bypasses reason, and speaks directly to something ancient and instinctive in it. The scent of decay can also appear tied to places where suffering has been great and malice runs deep. Old battlegrounds, sites of ritual sacrifice, and places of unnatural death often carry reports of phantom decay. In such locations, the scent is not an isolated oddity. It is a signature of the place. It becomes part of its memory, as though the air itself has absorbed the anguish and violence that occurred there. There is a haunting power to this scent because it carries with it a sense of intentionality. It does not simply appear by accident. It arrives as though called, as though drawn to certain moments and people. For those who have experienced it, decay is not a passive haunting. It is an active presence, one that moves in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make itself known. The smell of decay is not just a sensory experience. It is an encounter with something that cannot be explained. It speaks of endings without closure, of presence without form, and of a malice that lingers beyond reason. It is one of the most unsettling of phantom scents, precisely because it cannot be easily dismissed. It is a reminder that some presences leave more than footprints in memory. They leave a scent that endures. For those who have experienced it, the scent of rot becomes a lasting impression. It is not easily forgotten. It becomes a part of the story of the place, a detail that lingers in memory like the fragrance itself. And in that lingering presence is a reminder that decay is not just the end of life. It can also be a haunting that refuses to die. The presence of decay in hauntings lingers far beyond the moment it is experienced. It does not fade like a passing shadow. It embeds itself into the memory of those who encounter it, leaving a lasting impression that is both unsettling and inescapable. It is not merely a scent. It is a message, a warning, a presence that transcends the physical world. There is a small village in rural Italy where the scent of rot has become an accepted part of its folklore. Visitors to certain abandoned homes report sudden waves of decay that appear without cause. In some cases, the smell seems to attach itself to individuals, following them from room to room. Locals speak of it as the breath of the house, a living thing that carries its own memory of suffering. For them, the scent is not an anomaly. It is a sign, proof that some things never truly die. The sense of malice carried by decay is unique among phantom scents. Sweet perfumes speak of memory and longing. Smoke carries warning or remembrance, but rot carries intent. It is heavy, oppressive, and unsettling in a way that goes beyond the senses. Those who encounter it rarely describe it as an accident. It feels purposeful, a deliberate intrusion into the living world. In a manor on the outskirts of Prague, there is a room said to be the center of such a haunting. Guests who enter report the sudden appearance of a stench so foul it forces them to retreat. It is not just the smell of decay, it is the smell of something ancient and unnatural. Some speak of a presence that seems to press in behind the scent, an unseen force watching from the shadows. For those who experience it, the encounter is not easily forgotten. The room becomes more than a physical space. It becomes a threshold to something darker, something that exists beyond the veil of the living. There is a certain inevitability to the scent of decay. In its presence, the living are reminded of mortality in its purest form. It speaks of what we most fear, the loss of life, the corruption of flesh, the absence that follows. It is a haunting that touches something primal within us, awakening instinct as much as memory. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to the body, to the instinct for survival, and to the deep unease we feel when confronted by death. Some hauntings suggest that decay is not simply a remnant of the past, but a force that moves with intent. In certain traditions, this scent is believed to be a manifestation of unresolved malice, a spirit bound by pain or anger that has chosen to linger. In this way, decay becomes more than a smell. It becomes a statement, a claim of continued existence in the world of the living. There are places where this haunting is woven into the very fabric of the location. Abandoned crypts, forgotten battlefield, and cursed houses all carry the scent of rot as part of their identity. It is a fragrance that becomes inseparable from the history of the place, a living trace of its story. Visitors to such places speak of entering a world where decay is not occasional but constant, a reminder that some presences never rest. The most unsettling part of this phenomenon is how decay reaches beyond explanation. It is a scent without a source, a presence without form. It is felt as much as it is smelled, a presence that moves in the air like a shadow with its own purpose. Those who have encountered it speak of it in terms of an unshakable certainty, a knowing that something unseen has made itself known. For some, the scent of decay is not something to be feared, but a call to attention. It is a reminder that the world is layered, that beneath the surface of life there are traces of what once was. It is proof that the living and the dead share a space more complex than we often imagine. Yet for most, the scent carries dread. It speaks of endings that cannot be reversed, of presence that cannot be denied, of malice that endures beyond death. In its persistence, there is a silent testimony that decay is not simply the end of life, but a haunting that can linger forever. In the presence of such a scent, one is reminded that the air we breathe holds more than oxygen. It holds memory, it holds warning, and it holds the breath of things that are gone but not gone. The smell of decay is a reminder that some endings are never truly final and that malice, like memory, can endure beyond the grave. There is something strangely intimate about scent. Unlike sight or sound, which can be shared and explained, smell is personal. It is tied directly to memory, and memory is tied to the heart. In the world of hauntings, scents become far more than simple fragrances. They become echoes of the past, traces of presence, and sometimes the last vestiges of what once was. To encounter a phantom scent is to encounter a memory without form. It is the ghost of something once real, something that lived and breathed, preserved in the air as though it never truly left. Those who have experienced such phenomena often describe it as a moment of recognition, a strange familiarity that cannot be explained. The scent arrives unexpectedly, carrying with it a whisper of something unseen. Some hauntings suggest that scent is a bridge between worlds. In certain traditions, fragrances are not merely remnants of memory. They are the lingering touch of the departed. A sweet perfume, the smell of smoke, the rot of decay. Each becomes a language through which the unseen communicates with the living. It is a language without words, carried on air currents that slip unnoticed into rooms, into corners, into minds. There is a haunting in an old chateau in France that illustrates this perfectly. Visitors who enter certain rooms speak of a sudden fragrance of roses, delicate and warm, filling the air for a few moments before vanishing. There is no rose in the room, no cause for the scent. Yet those who have felt it speak of it as deeply personal, as though the air itself had reached into memory. For some, it recalls a lost loved one. For others, it evokes a feeling of sadness they cannot name. The scent becomes an unseen touch, an echo that lingers long after it is gone. What makes phantom scents extraordinary is how they awaken something ancient in us. The olfactory sense is closely tied to the brain's limbic system, the part that governs emotion and memory. This is why the smell of perfume, smoke, or decay can suddenly transport us to moments long past. In hauntings, this connection becomes something uncanny. A scent is not simply remembered. It becomes relived. It carries with it the emotional imprint of the moment it first existed, and in doing so, it carries something of the presence that left it behind. In some cases, scents seem to act as a form of memory preserved beyond life. An old monastery in Greece is said to emit the faint scent of incense on certain nights. Monks who once lived there have long since passed, yet the air carries the fragrance as though it is the breath of their devotion preserved in stone. Visitors speak of it as a sensation rather than a smell, something that touches the mind as much as the senses. For them, the fragrance is not simply an echo of history, but a living connection to it. These lingering scents are rarely random. They appear in specific places at particular times, and often in connection with emotional moments. They are tied to grief, to love, to tragedy. In hauntings, scent becomes an unseen thread weaving together time, place, and presence. It is a reminder that the world we perceive is layered with memory, and that memory can be carried on the air. There is a subtle poetry in this phenomenon. To smell something that is not there is to encounter a fragment of another time. It is to experience memory as a physical thing, to feel the presence of what has passed without seeing it. In hauntings, scent becomes a form of invisible storytelling. It speaks in the quietest way possible, touching those who listen without speaking aloud. For many who encounter phantom scents, the experience becomes a moment of reflection. It is not simply fear or curiosity, it is something deeper. The scent becomes a question, a mystery that lingers long after it is gone. Why did it appear? What does it mean? Is it memory? Is it message? Or is it something else entirely? In the silence that follows such experiences, the answer is never certain. What remains is the memory of the scent itself, a trace without form, an unseen touch of something that once was and perhaps still is. In hauntings, scent becomes something deeply personal. It does not simply announce a presence. It draws the living into an experience that is uniquely theirs. A fragrance can awaken memories long buried, trigger emotions unspoken, and connect the living to the dead in ways that words cannot capture. It is a language that moves beyond explanation, carried in the most intimate way possible through the air we breathe. There are stories from old homes across Europe where phantom scents are more than an occasional occurrence. They are part of the house itself. In a manor in Scotland, visitors and residents alike speak of the sudden appearance of a fragrance of lavender, warm and sweet, filling a room for only moments before fading away. Those who have experienced it describe it as a memory that comes alive, though they cannot say whose memory it is. Some believe it is the scent of a long-departed inhabitant, a presence preserved in the house as surely as its walls and floors. Others think it is the breath of the past, returning to the present without warning. What is remarkable about these hauntings is the way scents can carry with them an emotional signature. They are not simply odors, they are feelings given form. The perfuming of a ghost may carry with it a sense of longing. Smoke may carry the weight of destruction. Decay may speak of anger or malice. And lingering fragrances, like those that appear without source, carry the essence of memory itself. There is an old legend from Japan that speaks to this phenomenon. In certain shrines, it is said that a specific incense fragrance will appear without being lit, particularly in places where great loss occurred. Locals believe these scents are the lingering prayers of the departed, preserved in the air as a form of blessing or warning. Whether one sees this as superstition or spiritual truth, the story reflects a deeper understanding that scent in the world of hauntings is not random, but a language of memory and presence. The way these scents arrive is as mysterious as the scents themselves. Some appear in fleeting moments, vanishing as suddenly as they came. Others linger, saturating a space until they become part of it. In an abandoned cathedral in Spain, visitors speak of a faint scent of myrrh that lingers for hours, though there is no source and no explanation. To those who have experienced it, the scent becomes part of the space itself, a living memory woven into the air. For many, the encounter with a phantom scent becomes something that cannot be forgotten. It is not simply an experience of the senses. It is an encounter with something beyond the senses. It becomes a moment suspended in time, where memory and presence meet, where the living brush against something unseen. This is why hauntings that involve scent feel so profound. They bypass logic. They bypass sight and sound. They speak directly to the heart of human perception. They remind us that memory is not confined to the mind. It can exist in the air, in the world around us, in ways we do not fully understand. There is a story from an old abbey in Ireland where this is said to happen. Visitors to the ruin sometimes report the sudden scent of wildflowers, despite the stone halls being bare and empty. For those who sense it, the fragrance is more than a memory of flowers. It is a memory of life itself, carried in the air like a whisper. It is an invisible touch, a proof that the past is not gone, but woven into the present. Phantom scents in this way become a haunting of the most intimate kind. They do not announce themselves with noise or spectacle. They arrive quietly, carried on the air, touching those who notice them with something unseen. They are not simply reminders of the past. They are the past itself, preserved in a breath of air. In experiencing such scents, one comes to realize that haunting is not always about what can be seen. Sometimes it is about what can be felt, what can be remembered without words. It is the unseen touch of memory, wrapped in the language of scent. There are places where these lingering scents become part of the story of the location itself. In an ancient abbey in Scotland, the air is said to carry the fragrance of candles and wax late at night, long after the lights have been extinguished and no one remains. Locals speak of it as the breath of the past, a quiet presence that rests within the stone walls. Those who have experienced it describe a sense of peace mixed with melancholy, as though the scent is not only a memory, but a message carried across time. In hauntings, scents often arrive in connection to moments of emotional significance. A sudden fragrance of roses may appear in the room where a tragedy occurred. The faint smoke of a fire may drift through a corridor where lives were lost. The scent of rot may arise where malice has taken root. These fragrances are not random. They are tied to the emotional and spiritual essence of the place and the events that shaped it. There is an old manor in the English countryside that has long been the subject of such stories. Visitors speak of a sweet perfume that appears in a particular bedroom at dusk. There is no source for the scent. It comes suddenly, filling the air with warmth, and then fades. Those who have experienced it say it feels like more than a fragrance. It feels like a presence, a gentle reminder of something lost. For some, the scent is connected to a loved one who once lived there. For others, it is a mystery without answer, a fragment of the house's soul preserved in the air. The way these scents linger is part of their power. They do not simply disappear. They become part of memory. Those who encounter them often carry the sensation long afterward, as if the scent has imprinted itself upon the mind. It becomes less about the smell itself and more about what it represents. A bridge to another time, another world, another presence. Phantom scents often arrive without warning, but they are never entirely accidental. They appear in moments when memory, emotion, and presence converge. In a forest in Romania, wanderers have described the sudden scent of decaying flowers, even in seasons when no blooms remain. For them, the fragrance is not simply an olfactory phenomenon. It is a message from the land, an unseen thread woven to the air that connects them to something older and deeper than themselves. There is an unsettling intimacy in these encounters. Smell is the sense most closely tied to memory, and memory is deeply personal. To smell something that is not there is to feel a moment of connection without explanation. It is to encounter something unseen and yet deeply familiar. In haunting, scents are not merely remnants of the past. They are the past itself, carried into the present on invisible currents of air. For some, this is a comfort. The lingering perfume of a departed loved one can feel like a sign that they are still near. For others, the smell of rot or smoke carries a warning, a reminder of unfinished business, of malice, or of loss. Whatever the nature of the scent, It becomes part of the haunting itself, an essential layer of its presence. There is a certain poetry to the idea that memory can be carried on the air. A scent is invisible, fleeting, and intangible. Yet it can hold more meaning than sight or sound. In the realm of hauntings, scent becomes a form of language, subtle, elusive, and deeply moving. It speaks to something beyond the senses, touching the living in ways that cannot be measured or explained. The lingering scent is proof that memory is not confined to the mind. It exists in the world around us. It exists in the air we breathe. It exists in moments when presence transcends form. In hauntings, this truth becomes undeniable. To encounter a phantom scent is to encounter memory itself. For those who have felt it, the experience is unforgettable. It is not simply a moment, it is a presence. It is not simply a fragrance, it is an unseen touch, a memory preserved in the air, and a reminder that the past never truly leaves us. What makes phantom scents truly extraordinary is their ability to transform an ordinary space into something timeless. A hallway, a room, a clearing in the forest, once touched by a scent without source, becomes a threshold to another realm. It is as though the air itself holds a story, and the scent is the key to unlocking it. There is a centuries-old inn in the Scottish Highlands known for this phenomena. Travelers have reported entering a particular room only to be greeted by the faint scent of lavender and old wood. There's no candle, no perfume bottle, and no flowers in the room. Yet the fragrance arrives with certainty, filling the space with an almost tangible presence. Those who have experienced it speak of a sense of peace, mingled with something ineffable, as though the scent is not just a memory, but a gift, an unseen touch from the past. In hauntings, scents can serve as the bridge between worlds. They are the quiet language of the unseen. While sights and sounds can be fleeting and open to interpretation, scent has a unique ability to root itself in memory, to persist in ways beyond the reach of logic. This is why hauntings that involve scent are so profoundly affecting. They speak directly to the heart, bypassing the rational mind and stirring something deep within. In some places, these lingering scents become an unshakable part of the location's identity. In an abandoned manor in Poland, visitors speak of a faint fragrance of roses that fills certain rooms at dusk. For some, the scent is a reminder of a life that once existed there, a memory preserved in stone and air. For others, it is a mystery without explanation, a presence that speaks in silence. The scent becomes a part of the house itself, as permanent as its walls and as haunting as its shadows. Phantom scents can also act as a form of connection between the living and the dead. In certain traditions, it is believed that scents are the last traces of life preserved beyond the grave. Sweet perfumes, the smell of smoke, or the rot of decay are not merely sensory experiences. They are remnants of existence, echoes of the soul. They are the unseen touch of memory, carried through time to speak to those who remain. There is a story from a monastery in Italy where this is said to happen. Monks who once lived there have long since passed, yet visitors report a faint scent of incense that lingers in the air at certain hours. There is no source. The fragrance appears suddenly, fills the air with quiet presence, and then disappears. For those who have sensed it, the experience is not simply a memory. It is a moment of communion, a reminder that some presences linger beyond form. What makes this phenomenon so haunting is its intimacy. Sight can be denied. Sound can be explained away. But scent is personal. It touches us without warning, evokes memory without reason, and lingers without explanation. To encounter a phantom scent is to be touched by something unseen, to be drawn into a moment that belongs to another time, another existence. These scents remain in memory far longer than any ghost story. They are remembered not just for what they are, but for what they represent, the presence of something beyond understanding. They speak of endings and beginnings, of love and loss, of malice and mercy. They are proof that memory can be carried in the air and that the unseen can touch the living without crossing a threshold. For those who experience them, phantom scents are never forgotten. They remain as an unseen signature, a trace that lingers like a breath. They are the quietest of hauntings, but perhaps the most profound, an intimate reminder that the dead are never truly gone. They live on in memory, in story, and in the lingering touch of scent upon the air. In the stillness that follows such an encounter, there is a question that lingers as strongly as the scent itself. Was it memory or was it presence? Was it chance or was it intention? Perhaps the answer is not meant to be found. Perhaps the scent is not meant to be understood, but simply felt as a whisper from the unseen, a touch of memory and proof that the air we breathe can hold more than life. And so these scents endure, carried on invisible currents, bridging past and present. They are reminders that haunting is not always something seen or heard. Sometimes it is something felt, something smelled, something remembered without form. The unseen touch of memory lingers, a phantom fragrance that remains long after we have left the place where it appeared.